Welcome to Kevin Makes Cool Things. I'm Kevin, and this is my Aventurine wand. This is the third and final project in a series I've been doing which incorporate real crystals, or polished minerals if you want to be technical, into 3D prints. This was something I was really excited to try, and I've been pleased with the results. The first in this series was an agate clasp I made for a Harry Potter Halloween costume. The second was this sodalite wand I posted a few months ago. With the sodalite wand, I used a 1.2 inch sphere, and I put it in the center of the wand. The Aventurine sphere I'm using is a little smaller, only 0.9 inches, and I decided to put it in the base. That was my starting point for the design. I knew I wanted to go with a plant-like design with vines, but the details changed a lot over time. This is my earliest sketch. I thought it was kind of boring, so I revised my design and came up with this. I opened up OpenSCAD planning to make this and, well, things escalated from there. One of the first problems I encountered was with the vines holding the stone. I looked at doing something more ornate and complicated, but I ran into issues with visibility. More impressive vines took up more space, which meant less of the Aventurine sphere was visible. Maybe I could have gotten around it if I was using a higher-end printer with more detail, or if I was working with a resin printer, but with my current printer, I couldn't get around that trade-off. Since the Aventurine sphere is supposed to be the centerpiece of the wand, I opted for something simple to better showcase the stone. The leaves along the wand's handle were the next addition. These were inspired by the details on Hermione's wand. I thought it was really neat that this pattern was carved into a wooden wand, but I wanted my wand to look alive, so I decided to paint the vines and the leaves green. The big leaves were the final addition. I was doodling designs and I tried this. Much to my horror and delight, I fell in love with the design immediately. I didn't want to like this design because one of my early projects, my Victreeple chapstick holder, went so poorly I was scared to work with delicate leaves like this again. Ultimately, I decided to go through with it, but I wasn't happy about it. I copied portions of the Victreeple chapstick holder file into this project and adjusted it a little to change how the leaves bent. With that, the handle was done. The straight section is a 9-inch length of 7/16 inch dowel. The vines which captured the stone were problematic. The printed pieces were slightly too large, but I managed to shave them down with a knife and get them to fit together. There was supposed to be a small channel for a bit of paperclip to run down the center and connect these pieces, but it didn't print correctly. I was worried about this breaking, so I sanded it, applied some wood filler, and then did some more sanding before I attached it to the other pieces. I didn't want to spend hours working on this only to find out this piece was a bust. It did end up breaking later when I was doing some more sanding, but I managed to get it back together. After the stone was in place, I started fitting the rest of the handle together and gluing it with 2-part epoxy. When I was designing this, I left a hole for a bit of nail to go between the pieces to make sure they were centered. I sanded the handle, applied some wood filler, and then sanded it again. Next I carved, sanded, and attached the dowel. I drilled a hole into it which matched a hole in the top of the handle. This allowed another bit of nail to center these pieces and make it less likely to snap. Then it was time for some more wood filler and sanding to disguise the join and clean up some other little areas. I used a small set of files for a lot of this. I got these years ago for around $10, and they were the MVP of this project. They helped me sand into fine areas I never could have reached with just sandpaper. After I'd done everything I possibly could, I moved on to the big leaves. I wanted to do the bare minimum after I attached them, to make it less likely I'd break them off. The big leaves were problematic. I printed them with these dinky little stems, which was obviously a mistake. I left a small channel in them, hoping that I could use a bit of paperclip to center them, but it didn't survive the printing. I should have done something like this instead, but it didn't occur to me at the time. Attaching the first leaf went relatively well. It was slightly off-center, and I'm torn between loving the asymmetry and hating it. Since I didn't want to break the leaf off and try again, I decided I loved it. The second leaf required 2 attempts. The first time, I used too much epoxy, and it obscured some of the details. I was trying to shave the excess off, and snap. The next time, I was more careful, and shaved off the excess after only a couple of hours, before the epoxy had set and become brittle. I applied some more wood filler and did a little bit of cleanup, and then I was ready to paint. I started with some white paint and then moved on to the green. I decided to use this green metallic paint, and it turned out even better than I'd hoped. After that, I applied brown paint to the rest of the wand, and then went back to clean up my mistakes. I still haven't figured out how to paint wood grain, so I settled for smudging some darker paint along the wand to give it some texture. I finished it with a layer of gloss Mod Podge. I did the handle up to the big leaves and then let it sit for a couple of days before doing the other half. This gave each section plenty of time to dry so it didn't get damaged. I didn't want a repeat of what happened with my Sodalite wand. And with that, it was done. I've made a few wands, but this one's definitely my favorite. I like the design, the paint looks awesome, and I didn't screw up too badly while making it. If you want to make your own, I've included a link to the files in the video's description. If you want to support the channel, then please like and subscribe.